everyone, and welcome to episode 145 of A Stitch in Time. Today is Friday, June 19th, 2020. I'm Carol. I am known as Knitsnpurls on Ravelry, and I live here in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, not too far from Vancouver. If this is your first time watching, a special hello and welcome to you. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Thank you for coming by once again to spend part of your day with me. A very huge shout out to all of you who took the time to reach out, say hello this past week. I always so appreciate the interaction I have with you. And I was blown away by the thoughtfulness of one viewer who's fairly local to me, maybe a little more than an hour's drive away, who very kindly offered to give me her spare bread maker after I mentioned last week that mine had given up the ghost. And as I explained to her, my mom also happens to have a spare one that I'm going to pick up when we go to the cabin. But I was just overwhelmed by such a thoughtful gesture, and just thought the kindness of knitters, the kindness of strangers. So yes, thank you once again. You know who you are. I was thinking I didn't have a lot to talk about this week, but I do have a few projects to share, including a finished project that I happen to be wearing. It's a little bit warm. I'm hoping I can stand it for the entirety of the episode. We have a beautiful sunny day here today. It is supposed to get up to, I think, sort of the mid-20s, which would be like high 70s in Fahrenheit. It's a welcome switch from the clouds and rain we had earlier this week. Yesterday was equally beautiful. But we're back to rain tomorrow and Sunday, of course. That's just sort of how it's been this spring. So yes, I'll see if I can stand wearing it for a full half an hour or so. I might have to go switch to something a little cooler. But yeah, let's jump in. So I'm going to just insert right here a little blurb I filmed a few minutes ago about this sweater. And then maybe once we come back, I'll stand up because it'll give it a little bit closer look to the camera, and you can see it a little bit more closely up. So be right back. All right, so here is my finished walk along. It is a pattern by Anka Strick, and I knit mine in Madeline Tosh Merino Light. The main color here is Night Bloom, and then the contrasting color is Onyx. I knit it more or less as written, except that I knit the body, the main body, about an inch longer than suggested, but then I knit the bottom part a little bit shorter than suggested, just because I thought those proportions were better for my body. I also, instead of binding off the main part and then picking up the stitches for the bottom about one stitch in from the bind off, I instead picked up my bottom stitches right at the top of the ribbing from underneath, just to create maybe a little more of an illusion that it's one top being worn over another. I like the way it looks. Honestly, I looked at different project pages. Some people just didn't even bother binding off. They just knit around and switched to the contrasting color, and it looks fine. I had one viewer say that she knit a round of purl stitches and then proceeded with the bottom stockinette, and she was happy with that. So if I were to knit this again, I might consider doing that. I did just follow the instructions for the sleeves and switch from ribbing to this bottom contrast that creates like a little rolled hem, I guess. I knit the second size, but with my gauge, I think it turned out to be about midway between the second and third sizes. I'm really happy with how it fits. I'm just going to give you a little turn around so you can see it from all angles. I decided to stick with the A-line shaping that was written into the pattern, This is something I will often change into more traditional, shaping where you go in for the waist and out for the hips. But because it is a casual top with a bit of a relaxed fit, I thought I would try it and see how it worked, and I'm very happy with it. This pattern is also, it also includes an option for long sleeves, which I can definitely see myself doing in the future. I like the way the pattern fits up in here with the raglan shaping. It's probably the best fitting raglan sweater I've knit. And I'm just overall just really, really pleased with how it turned out. So I'll give you one more spin and then we'll get back to the regular podcast. Okay, I'm going to scooch up a little bit closer to the camera just so you can see some of the details more clearly. So as you can see, there is a ribbed neckline that is finished off with this rolled edge in a contrasting color, and then that is repeated on the sleeves. I've never seen a raglan quite like this. It's quite a wide band that separates the fronts and backs from the sleeves, and I just really like how it fits and how it lies. And then there's like a faux seam that runs down either side of the front and the back, and it's just a nice detail. So what I didn't mention is that I alternated 2 skeins throughout using the helical method. And I did notice this area here, I think just the way the skeins worked out, it is a little bit darker here, but doesn't bother me. That's how the yarn knit up. I can only control so much. Those of you who have watched me for a while know I'm just a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to knitting, but even I sometimes just have to let it be. So all in all, I'm extremely pleased with how this pattern turned out. I will definitely knit it again. I can see myself making a long sleeve version, maybe doing a different neckline finish. I think it'd be nice striped or in a fade, or just I can definitely just see myself knitting this at least once more, if not more than that. It's a great basic fingering weight sweater pattern. And so thank you, another kind viewer, you know who you are, for gifting me this pattern in the first place. As you can see, it's been well loved, much appreciated. Okay, moving on. I have 2 pairs of socks in which I've finished the first sock. So the first one is what I call my sunny day socks, and it's very fitting for today. 64 stitch top down sock, 1x1 twisted rib, a yarn over short row heel, rounded toe, and it is knit from this sock blank. Really fun, bright colors, and it is by Isis Fiber Arts, and it is the fingering sparkle base, but it does not have a colorway name. I picked this up at Knit City about a year and a half ago, so I just kept going back to it and finally gave in. And I have a cast on sock number 2. And I've done the ribbing, and I'm about an inch way down the foot. Now, what I did do is I went ahead and blocked this sock. I was running water to block this and to wash the socks, the hand knit socks from the week anyway, and I decided I would do that because I've had questions before about working with sock blanks, but it's if I have new viewers, it's worth repeating the information again. So what happens when you knit from a sock blank? It's literally a piece of knitted fabric. Oops, a wrong end. It's literally a piece of knitted fabric that has been dyed in some way, and then you just literally unravel it and knit up your sock or shawl or whatever else you want to make from it as it unravels. And so you can see the yarn is like curly noodles. It's a little bit different knitting it up. It's definitely you sort of have to adjust to this idea that it's not straight and that it has a little bit of give to it. But when you knit it up, your knitting is kind of crinkly. But as you can see from here, that once you block it, that knitting does smooth out quite significantly. I don't think the stitches will ever be as even and smooth as they would be on yarn that isn't all crinkly, but it definitely does smooth out considerably. So don't worry, your sock will not look bumpy and lumpy forever. It does smooth out quite a bit. So very happy with how these are going so far. And as I mentioned, I'm just going to reach over here. I have another pair of socks. These are, well, this is sock number 1 of the Cirrus socks by Helen Stewart, part of the Handmade Sock Society. I've lost count now. I think it's 3, 4, I can't remember. It doesn't matter. We have a link in the show notes. The yarn is from Fiber Nymph Dye Works. Her bounce base, which is 80/20 super wash merino nylon, and this is the denim colorway. So here's sock number 1. Now I was a little bit concerned. It seemed a little bit loose and it seems to slouch down. But I do believe with blocking that it will stretch out just that little bit. It will stretch out and smooth out a bit, because I have tried this on my foot and it actually does fit on my calf just fine. And so I don't think that that is going to be an issue at all. So I don't think I have it here, but I did cast on immediately sock number 2, and I've just done a few rows of the ribbing. I have learned by now that if I don't cast on the second sock right away, it does tend to, shall we say, go by the wayside. I am guilty of second sock syndrome, and so I do make a point for most of the time, once I finish one, even if I only have a few minutes, I'll just cast on the second one, hopefully knit a round or 2, and then once that's done, somehow they're more welcoming to work on. Because I think the casting on and especially the ribbing are sort of the worst 2 parts of knitting socks, and then the fun part starts. So yeah, so that's done. I think I did, well, I know I did knit a little bit on my Chambray socks, which is another pair of plain stockinette socks, but they weren't different enough to bring in and show you. So I will no doubt work on them more this coming week, and then I'll have maybe even a finished pair to show you. Who knows? The last project I had not cast on last time we spoke, but finishing my walk along spurred me on to casting on another short sleeve, lightweight wool sweater. So I did mention this last week. It's the Lounging Top by Joji Locatelli. And let's see if I can cut the glare on that. I'm not doing a very good job, am I? There, that might work. There you go. So it is a very, very basic front and back sweater. You work the back to the bottom of the armhole. You pick up the front stitches along each shoulder seam. You work down, join in the round, and then just keep going. You can't see it on this picture. I'm just going to see if there are any other pictures that might show it. No, it does have a, the hemline is shorter in the front and tapers to the back. And sometimes I've done that and I haven't liked the result, but I am going to give that a try. And if I really hate it, I'll take it back. But it does look cute in the sample, and so I think I'm going to do that. And I didn't mention last week that this pattern is part of a fundraiser that Madeline Tosh is doing. And I feel like a loser because I totally forgot to look into all the details. So I will either put a little something here, or I'll put a link in the show notes for sure. And I believe it runs until the end of June. So if it's something you're interested in checking out, by all means, click on the link in the show notes and it'll take you to the information. So I have cast that on. Oh, I don't have the yarn labels, but that's okay. I've cast it on in, the pattern is originally knit in Madeline Tosh Merino Light, like this. But I am instead knitting it in a very similar yarn, which is Fleece Artist Merino Slim. And it's in the coral colorway. Quite an orange color. I am again knitting it out of 2 skeins, and I am alternating the skeins. At the moment I am knitting back and forth, so I'm knitting across and back with one, cross and back with the next. I just slipped the partway down the back, and all it is, it looks like, if I don't do anything, it's just this piece of rolled fabric, so it's hard to see, but I did slip the shoulder cast on stitches onto just some DPNs, just to give them a little bit more structure so that you can get a sense. So this is the back. You can see I'm partway down the back here. I've got about, I think about 2 more, maybe less than 2 more inches to go. And then I will break the yarn, set this piece aside, and pick up along whichever shoulder it tells me to first. The armholes are just trimmed with several stitches of garter stitch, and then there's little garter stitch band you pick up around the neckline afterwards. And the bottom also has garter stitch as trim. So other than that, it is stocking stitch, mindless kind of knitting. I like seeing it up here because I get a better sense of how it looks. I think the color is fairly true on the camera. You call it coral. It definitely is pretty well orange, but it's like what I think is a nice shade of orange. So yeah, I think that will be a fun one to work on over the next little while. Low stress knitting. Okay, I think that's it for knitting projects. Yes, it is. I told you last week that I was not going to show cross stitch every week, but I do have a fairly significant amount done on this autumn bell pull that I showed you last week. So I'm working on the U, and as you can see, I have finished all the acorns and oak leaves, and I've just started work, you can see a little bit here and here, on some maple leaves. And once that's done, then I just need to back stitch the you know, wherever it calls for, and then do the writing here. So moving along quite well. Still really enjoying getting back to cross stitch, especially when the weather is good, the light is even that much better. It's even easier for me to see. I did do some more work on the Christmas tree one also, but I didn't feel like it was significant enough to show you. One thing I reconsidered is that I do believe I will do some of the metallic stitching as I move throughout it. Originally I said I was going to leave all that to the end, but then I went looking for the metallic thread and realized I actually didn't have what it called for. So for some reason I never did get the gold thread. I took a look online and looked for it on in various places, and I'm actually substituting it with a different thread that was recommended. So I placed an online order waiting for that to arrive. I don't think it'll take that long, just from a place back in Ontario. So once that comes, I will add a little bit of metallic stitching to that. So once that area is finished on the tree, I'll give you a peek. Up and coming, a reminder that this coming Thursday, the first clue for Helen Stewart's Mystery Knit Along for the Stillness shawl is going to be released. The pattern is available for purchase now. And so last week I showed you the yarns I was considering, so I have them all ready to go. I've got a project page made. But I might have to wait till Friday to cast on because I don't think we're going to be here on Thursday. And I will not have internet where I am. Another up and coming, also by Helen Stewart, the next pattern in the Handmade Sock Society was released. These are called Vapor Socks. Again, I'll come in a little closer. It has a lace pattern that runs up the front of the leg and foot, and then a little bit of a column of eyelets, and then the back is plain again. So I looked a little bit through my yarn, but not too much, so I'm not really sure which yarn I'm going to use for these. I think I would be wise, although it's not always, I'm not always as wise as I should be. I will probably wait until I have finished one of the pairs that I have on the go for this collection before I cast on this new one, but never say never. Maybe in here it will tell me which Handmade Sock Society number it is. No, it does not. Not that I can see anyway. Doesn't matter. It will be on the project page. So that is it for all the crafting. It has been a rather uneventful week. I believe I told you I was acquiring a secondhand phone from my son, which I did pick up on Friday. Unfortunately, it takes a different size SIM card than my old phone, and I was unable to switch it over online because I didn't have the number from my old SIM card. So Saturday, Cameron and I took a quick trip one city over to get them to do it there. For some reason, our store here in town is closed, and I don't know if that's a temporary thing because of COVID-19 or if it is a permanent closure, but it's kind of a nuisance to have to go 25 or 30 minutes down the road just to have something so simple done. It literally took just a couple of minutes. But anyway, I've got my new phone all set up, and it definitely improvement because I can connect to the internet on it. For some reason, my old phone would just search and search and search and would not connect to the internet anymore, which doesn't make it that useful. I'm really excited because as of the end of his shift today, Cameron is going to be on holidays for the next week. It has been an incredibly busy and stressful last few months for him, primarily because of COVID-19 and, you know, on top of all his regular responsibilities. So it is a much needed and much anticipated break for him. He hasn't had any time off since Christmas time. I think we're both really looking forward to some relaxation and time together, and hopefully he can just forget about work for a week. So we are planning to head up to the cabin for a few days next week. Even though BC has not yet transitioned into their next phase of reopening. So I had a little bit of a struggle with this decision. I'm a real rules follower. And while non-essential travel is not completely banned, we've been asked to limit it, which we have up until this point. The purpose for that is that officials are fearful of COVID-19 being introduced into more remote, smaller communities where they may not have the capacity to deal with it. And I completely understand that. Having said that, out at the cabin, we are self-sufficient. We will bring all our own groceries and supplies. And so other than a quick pit stop at a provincial campground on the way up and the way back, and a socially distant visit with my mom, we're not going to be coming into contact with people from the community, and going to stores and things like that. So I feel like in good conscience we're living up to the spirit of the request. And having said that, it does sound like there may be an announcement on Monday about the province's next phase. And it might be that it may be just coinciding with it in any way. So, yeah, it's lots of reasons to go there. One main one is that there is no cell phone service or internet, and it is a way for Cameron to completely disengage from work for a few days. As long as he has a cell phone, he sees all the emails and he is accessible. So something else to look forward to is tomorrow I am getting my hair cut for the first time in probably about 5 months. So say goodbye to COVID-19 quarantine hair. I had an appointment scheduled for the day after our first phase of regulations went into effect. And so I just missed my opportunity for a haircut before we went into self-isolation. And it's grown quite a bit. It's probably about 10 or 11 years since my hair has been this long. And I always say it doesn't grow long, it grows out. It's actually like if I uncurl it, it is like down to here. And I can pull most of it back into a little ponytail now. I briefly considered, since I've gotten this far, maybe I should grow it out. But then I went on the computer this morning and looked back at pictures from the last time I had it longer and just thought, no. Don't go there again. It gets very, very thick and heavy, and especially like this whole part, if I don't have a clip in it, it just kind of falls down on my face. So I think I might keep some of the length, but more or less go back to my hairstyle I've had for the last few years. It just is easy to look after, seems to suit me, and so I'll look even more like myself the next time you see me. On that note, I do not plan to record an episode next week, so if all goes as planned, it will be the following week that I'll be back to talk to you. I'm also more or less just going to take a step away from Ravelry and YouTube and all that. So if you do leave a comment and don't get a reply, please don't be offended. It's just because I'm not going to be checking in as often. And when we're up at the cabin, that's not even an option anyway. So I will try, if I read it, I'll put a little heart on, or a love on the comments on Ravelry and YouTube. So you'll know I've seen it. But I'm just going to say I'm not going to be answering all of those this next week. So, yes, just can't. I'm just so looking forward to just this upcoming week. The weekend weather here and there is not supposed to be great, but then it's supposed to be mid-20s and sunshine. So we should have good weather for our getaway also. So yes, seems to be all working out. My something good this time is homemade soup. Well, this Instant Pot beef barley soup this week in particular. This is the second time I've made this recipe, and as you can see, it's full of carrots, celery, onions, mushrooms, beef, and of course barley. It has a very rich broth, I think in part due to the fact that you add some red wine while you're cooking, but it is the best beef barley soup I've ever had. It is a recipe from All Recipes, and I will include a link to it in the show notes. Bon appetit! So I hope you are all well where you are. Stay well, take care, enjoy your crafting, and I will see you again in a couple of weeks.